Hang on 1 second. Okay, so we are recording now. The slope is the change in the graph line, and that's specifically the change in y, which is how high up the line moves or how far down it moves, divided by the change in x, which is the run. Typically, we go from left to right, although you can go from right to left as long as you use the negative. It's easier just to not deal with negatives and just go from left to right, and then you'll have to deal with one negative if you go down instead of up. And then last but not least is the slope-intercept form for an equation, and that's the way of writing an equation so that the slope and intercept are easily found. And we're going to see that first off right here in number 1. And it occurs to me that I haven't clicked share my screen yet. Let's make that a thing here. There we go. So can everyone see my screen clearly? Again, just type a Y if you can. Okay, good deal. So this first one here says we're going to start with graphing a line given its equation in slope-intercept form. And we're going to be dealing with a fractional slope. Technically, all slopes are in fractions, but when you have something over 1, you can just cancel out the 1. And the y-intercept form is specifically y. Whoop, got me again. This happened to me last time too. Okay, let's try that again. Y equals m times x plus b. And if we look at this line above up here, we can see that we have our m is the part that's being multiplied times x. That's our m. And our b is this number that's out here is not being multiplied times anything. It's just sitting out here. Our m is our slope, and the b is our y-intercept. So like I said, the y-intercept is the point where, I'm going to graph this in green. The y-intercept is the point where a graph line crosses this y-axis. And if you're on the y-axis right here, that means that you haven't moved left or right in x at all. So x is equal to 0, and then y is going to be some point along here. So if we take a look, our y-intercept is this plus 3 that we have over here. So I'm going to start at 0, 0. We count up 1, 2, and 3. We're going to go ahead and put a little dot right there. And then I'm going to use this slope. And like I said, slope is rise over run. Let me do this in red. Rise over run. And also, as I mentioned, we like to keep our run positive because that makes it easier. We just move to the right every time. So that means that if we have a negative slope, we're going to attach that negative to our rise. And we do, in fact, have a negative slope. Since we have negative 1 over 3, we're going to attach that negative to the 1 up top. And instead of going up 1, we're going to go down 2. So starting from this point that I made at the y-intercept, I'm going to count down 1 for that negative 1. And now my denominator is positive, and I'm going to use that positive 3 and count 1, 2, 3 to make my next point. And now that we have 2 points, we can automatically just graph our line. Goes right through those 2 points. All right, does that work for everybody? Anybody have any questions? All right, I'm not getting any questions, so let's go ahead and pull up the first practice problem, and you guys can do something very much like this. Let's see, right here. Okay, again, we're going to be graphing a line. We're given the equation y equals negative 1/2 x plus 5. I'd encourage you to find your y-intercept, and then find your slope, and plot your 2 points, and draw a line. I'll give you a few seconds to, well, I'll give you more than a few seconds. I'll give you a couple of minutes here to try it for yourself. I'll leave this one on the screen for a few more seconds while you guys write it down and jot it down on your paper. And then I'll pull the one I just did back up so that you can have something to work from. And let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so everybody get something worked out for that one? Let's go ahead and give it a shot. Does anybody need more time? Okay, I'm not getting any no's, so let's go ahead and graph this line here. Again, we're going to use our slope here. Got me again. And our y-intercept here. We're going to start off with that y-intercept, and we're going to say we have a y-intercept of +5, so we're going to start down here and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And using that slope, again, we have a negative slope, so we're going to attach that negative to the top number and count down 1. And then we have a positive denominator, we're going to count right 1, 2 to make our next point and draw a line. Kind of close, but I can do a little better. There we go. Keep in mind, these lines that I'm drawing, they do keep going on forever in both directions. They don't actually end at this point or at this point. They keep going up this way forever and down this way forever. But since I can't draw forever, I'm just going to draw short little lines. Everyone cool with that? Any questions? All right, seems like everybody's keeping up to pace, so let's go ahead and move on to the second question. For this one, we have finding the x and y intercepts of a line given the equation. Well, this is kind of not exactly backwards from what we were just doing, but just a little bit different here. We're given an equation, and this one's not given to us in slope-intercept form like that last one. This one is in standard form where we have both the x and y on one side and our constant on the other. But we want to get it back to that form where we have y. I swear, one of these days I'm going to remember it as soon as I click into the screen. Y equals m times x plus b. Just going to be some constants. So ultimately our goal is to get y by itself. Well, that's just basic algebra that we've been learning for the last few weeks here. So we've got this y term, and we need to get it completely by itself. So to get the y term to get the y by itself, first we have to get this y term by itself. So we need to move the 5x over. So I'm going to go ahead and write this out up here. If we have 5x minus 7y equals 12. Again, I first want to isolate this y term, so I'm going to move the 5x to the other side by subtracting it from both sides. When I do that, that's going to cancel this out, leave me at negative 7y on this side. And over here, I'm going to keep this x term first so that it looks like this nx plus b. So I'm going to have negative 5x plus 12. Now we've got the y term by itself, so we need to get the y by itself. We're going to do that by dividing by negative 7, since it's being multiplied by negative 7. If I divide this by negative 7, I have to divide everything by negative 7. So we wind up canceling out these negative 7s and get left with y equals negative 5 divided by negative 7. The negatives are going to cancel out, and since that doesn't divide too cleanly, I'm just going to leave that as 5/7 x. Oh, and then positive 12 divided by negative 7 is going to leave me with a negative number, a negative 12 over 7. And now we've got it to this y equals mx plus b form, where I can, there we go. I can take the number that's being multiplied times x, which is this 5/7. So my slope, oh shoot, I'm answering the wrong question. I apologize, people. We're looking for the y-intercept and the x-intercept, which means that we just did an awful lot of work, but we'll go ahead and use that to our advantage and finish up that point real quick. Where the 5/7 is our slope and the negative 12/7 is our y-intercept. So we have found our y-intercept already. There we go. y-intercept is going to equal -12/7. Typically, the way that you actually answer these questions is you just make a little chart. And as I was saying before, I'm going to go on to that last graph. If you're on your y-intercept, that means that you haven't gone anywhere in x. So x has to be 0 to find your y-intercept. At the same time, if you're on your x-intercept, that means you're on the point where your graph crosses this x-axis. And if you're crossing the x-axis, then you haven't gone up or down at all, so y has to equal 0. Yep, wrong one. Yep. There we go. So usually what I would do is make a little chart over here. I say x and y. And for my y-intercept, x will equal 0. For my x-intercept, y will equal 0. And then I just plug each one in. So if we have 5x minus 7y equals 12 and x equals 0, I'm going to erase all of this part. And just right back over that. Let's do this. Y-intercept will be in red here. So if I plug in x equals 0, I get 5 times 0 minus 7y equals 12. Of course, 0 times anything is going to be 0, so that just leaves me at -7y equals 12. Again, I'm going to divide by -7 to get that y by itself, and divide by -7 and get to y equals -12/7, which is what we had already found, so that's no big surprise. Let's do the x-intercept in blue. There we go. And for the x-intercept, that means that y is going to be 0. So we have 5 times x minus 7 times 0, since y is 0, is equal to 12. Again, 0 times anything is still just 0. So we get left with 5x equals 12. And divide both sides by 5 to find that our x-intercept is going to be 12/5. Again, I apologize for starting us off wrong there. I was looking for wrong work on my prep sheet here. So are there any questions about that? Yes, Don, this is intermediate algebra. All right, I don't seem to have any questions about the problem that we just worked out, so I'm going to pull up the second demo here, or practice, let you guys have at it. Again, we're not going to do all that other work that I just did. We're just going to make that little x and y chart, plug in the 0, and go to town, find out what x and y intercepts. I'll give you a minute or two to work through this, and I'll check on Okay, would anyone like a little more time to finish working this out, or are we ready to continue the explanation? All right, doesn't look like anybody wants any more time here, so let's go ahead and work through the explanation. Again, we have x is equal to 0, and I'm going to do this in color code again. I think. There we go. So if x is 0, then we have 5 times 0 minus 2y equals negative 6. Leave this at just 2y equals negative 6. Divide both sides by negative 2, and we'll find that our y-intercept is going to be equal to 3. And again, for the y-intercept, we have 5x minus 2 times 0. Sorry, I said y-intercept, I meant x-intercept. 5x minus 2 times 0 is equal to negative 6. Leaves us at 5x equals negative 6. Divide both sides by 5. And we find that our x-intercept then is at x equals negative 6/5. Is that what everybody else got? All right, good. Let's do demo number 3. So for this time, we're being given the graph and we're asked to find the slope. And even though they don't ask us for it, we're going to give them the y-intercept too, just for the fun of it, because hey, math is fun. It really is. The easiest way to find slope for a line is to find 2 points that you can clearly see what their coordinates are. And if we take a look, this one right here is definitely at this point where x is equal to 0 and y equals 1. So I'm going to say that point 1 equals x is 0 and y is 1. And for my point 2, I'm going to use this other point right down here where the line clearly comes down right below this 4 and right across from this negative 2. So my x here is 4 and my y is negative 2. As I stated up above here, slope is our change in y. To find the change in y, you're going to do some subtraction. So you take your final point and you subtract your initial point. And the way we say that is y2 minus y1, our change in y. And our run is our change in x. So again, we're going to take our final value for x and subtract our initial value for x. So it's going to be x2 minus x1. That's equal to our slope, which we designate with an m. So our y2 is going to be the y value from our point 2, negative 2, minus the y value from our point 1 is 1. And we're going to put that over our x value from number 2, which is 4, minus the x value from our first row. We simplify that, we get negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3, and 4 minus 0 is 4. Now it's important to note that it doesn't really matter which point you call 1 and which point you call 2, you'll still get the same exact slope. What matters is that you keep things tied together. So if I decide to call this first point, point 1, point 2, then its y value is going to be y2 and its x value would be x2. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here. I'm going to do this kind of the exact opposite. I'm going to say that point 1 is my point 2, which means my y2 would be 1, and my y1 would be the negative 2. So I have 1 minus negative 2. And at the bottom, I would have, since I'm calling point 1, point 2, my x2 is going to be 0, minus my x1, which would be 4 this time. That's going to give me 1 minus negative 2 is positive 3, divided by 0 minus 4 is negative 4, which is still just a negative 3/4. It doesn't matter if the negative's on the top or bottom. Either way, you still have a negative fraction. the negative up top is more useful when you're plotting the slope. So does anybody have any questions about that? All right, since there doesn't seem to be many questions about the problem here, I'm going to bring up the practice problem. I'll let you guys have a crack at that. I'll give you a couple minutes and come back and check on you. Feel free to type any questions into the chat box. All right, does anybody have any questions about the practice problem here? Or are you ready to go, for me to go over it? Let me ask that in a better way. I'm ready to go over it. Is there anybody that needs more time? Okay, it doesn't look like it. So we're going to go ahead and say that our point 1 here is going to be this point. I always like to start on the left for my point 1. No matter if I'm which direction the line is going, I find 2 points, and then whichever point is more to the left is the point that I start with. So my point 1 here is going to be at x equals -5 and y equals -2. Whoops. Why is it so darn thick? Because I'm zoomed in, that's why. Okay. So that's a little too far out. There we go. And then so we have point 2 over here is that x equals -2 and y equals 2. So we have -2 and 2. And again, we're going to use the equation y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So my y2 is going to be 2, My y1 is going to be -2. And then my x2 is also a -2 minus. My x1 is going to be a -5. If I do 2 minus -2, well, that's the same thing as saying 2 plus 2. So that's 4. And a -2 minus -5. So -2 plus 5 is going to be 3. So I come up 4 and right 3. Any questions? All right, let's go ahead and jump on to the next one then. Graphing a line given its slope and y-intercept. Well, that's almost too easy in a way after everything else we've just been doing. So again, we want, whenever you're given this kind of information, it's best to start with your y-intercept. That's basically your starting point, and life is just much easier that way. Let's pick red as a random color here. If we graph a line with a y-intercept of -1, well, it means on my y-axis, I'm going to start from 0 and come down 1. Whoop. After I tell it to use the brushes. So I've got my y-intercept of -1. My slope is -3/5. Again, I'm going to attach that negative to my numerator so that my rise is negative. And if my rise is negative, that means instead of going up, I'm going down. So I'm going to start from the point I just drew and go down 1, 2, 3. And now, since I made the top negative, that makes my denominator positive, and I'm going to count to the right 5 and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For my second point. And now we have 2 points. We can just drop a line right between them. And that's it. Nice and quick and easy and painless, I think. Any questions from anybody? Doesn't look like it, so I'm going to go ahead and let you have a crack at it. I'm not going to give you that much time for this one, so it's a little bit quicker. But just feel free to type in a question in the chat if you have one. Okay, so anybody need some more time? Doesn't look like it, so we're going to go ahead and start with our y-intercept of -6. Whoops, as soon as I switch over to red, there we go. Y-intercept of -6 means I'm going to start from 0 and count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just enough lines for that, huh? And if we have a slope of 3, again, any number can be written as a fraction. So with a slope of 3, that's the same thing as saying 3 over 1. Which means that I have a rise of 3, so I'm going to start from the point that I drew already and count up 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to count my run 1, and I draw another point. Now we have 2 points, put a line between them, and ta-da, we're done. Any questions? All right, let's move on to number 4. Or that was number 4. Let's move on to number 5 then. Finding the slope and y-intercept of the line, giving its equation in the form ax plus by equals c. Find the slope and y-intercept of the line -6 plus 3y equals -9. So here's the funny thing with math. You can solve them generically by replacing numbers with letters, which is what they've done up in the top line where they have ax plus by equals c. Ultimately, like we've seen already, to find the slope and y-intercept, it's a lot easier if we have it in the form of the equation of y equals mx plus b. So then we have our slope and our y-intercept. So if we start out with this equation of ax plus by equals c, and we solve it for y, we'll get it into this form. And then once we've done that, we can see that there's a pattern that will develop, that anytime you have the equation written in this standard form, where the x and y are on the left and the numbers by itself on the right, we can look pretty quick and see what our slope and y-intercept are. So I'm going to show you 2 different ways of solving this problem. First one, we're going to solve this generically, where again, we're going to get this y by itself, so I'm going to subtract ax from both sides. I'm going to get left with by equals -ax plus c, and I'm going to divide both sides by b, or rather, I'm going to divide everything by b. And I'm going to get left with y equals -a over b times x plus c over b. And if I recognize then that with my ax plus by equals c, if I look over here, my a is going to be this number is being multiplied times x, my b is going to be this number being multiplied times y, and my c is going to be this number that's over here on the right completely by itself. So the slope is the number being multiplied times x, which is -a over b. So I can say then that m is going to be equal to -a is -6, so +6. B is a +3. And 6 over 3 is just going to be 2. And then my y-intercept is going to be c over b. So I'm going to take this -9, which is my c, and divide that by b, which is 3, and get left with a -3. Now, actually, that's one of the beautiful things of math, is you can solve them with generic numbers like that. But if that's a little too confusing to you, you can just solve it with the regular numbers. So if we start off with this equation of -6x plus 3y equals -9. Again, I want to get this y term completely by itself, so I'm going to add 6x to both sides to get left with 3y equals 6x minus 9. And I'm going to divide everything by 3 to get the y completely by itself. So I have y equals 6 divided by 3 is going to be 2x. -9 divided by 3 is -3. Again, my slope is the 2 that's being multiplied times x, same 2 that we got over here. And my y-intercept is going to be this -3 over here, which is the same -3 that we got over here. So are there any questions about that? Doesn't look like anybody's having any problems. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the practice problem. Again, I'll put this page back up after 20 to 30 seconds and give you some time to write it down and start working on it. Solve it with either method. If you want to just recognize that slope is going to be your -a over b and your y-intercept is going to be c over b, you can do that. Or if you want to work it out like I did on the right, you can do that. Either way will get you to the right place. All right, would anybody like a little bit more time? Okay, well again, I could just recognize the fact that this is just a negative A over B and a C over B situation, but we're going to work through the math because it's not really that hard, and what the heck, right? Right. So we have, what the heck, I clicked on brushes already, didn't I? Yeah. Negative 3x, 3x minus y equals negative 2. Again, I want to get this y term by itself. I'm going to add 3x to both sides to get negative y equals 3x minus 2. And since I need the y by itself, I need to get rid of this negative, so I'm going to divide by a negative 1. And that'll cancel out the negative over there, which means I need to divide everything by negative 1. So I get down to y equals negative 3x, and negative 2 divided by negative 1 gives us a positive 2. Is that what everybody else got? All right, good. Let's get to problem number 6 here then. So the equation of a line is given below. Find the slope and y-intercept, then use them to graph the line. Again, I could just use the negative a over b part, but I'm going to go ahead and work it out here. So we have 3x, brushes, brushes, brushes. 3x plus y equals 1. Subtract 3x from both sides. To get y equals negative 3x plus 1. And hey, we're done already because y is completely by itself. So again, our slope here is going to be negative 3, and we can write that as negative 3 over 1. Our y-intercept is going to be this plus 1. So we'll start off with our y-intercept. We just count from 0 and come up 1. And then we use our slope of negative 3 over 1. So we're going to count down 3 from this point that we just made. 1, 2, 3, and then to the right 1. And put a point. We have our 2 points, so we can graph our line going between them. Close enough. Any questions? All right, I'll go ahead and pull up the practice problem, and let me know if you have any questions through the chat, please. All right, would anybody like a little bit more time with this one? Or shall I get started on the explanation? All righty here. So again, we're going to go ahead and start with the equation. Negative 3x plus 4y equals 4. We want to get the y term by itself, so we're going to add 3x to both sides. Close enough. Those cancel out, leave us at 4y equals 3x plus 4. And then we're going to divide everything by 4. We still need to get that y by itself. And that will leave us at y equals 3 over 4x plus 4 divided by 4 is just 1. So we've gotten it down to our slope-intercept form where y is completely by itself. Our slope is going to be 3 over 4. Our y-intercept would be 1. So let's go ahead and plot our y-intercept. Start from 0 and count up 1 and put in a point. And then starting from here, we're going to use our slope of 3/4. The 3 is on top, so that means we're going to go up 3. 1, 2, 3. And the 4 on the bottom means we're going to run to the right 4 and count 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have our second point there. We fill it in with a line. I can do a little better than that. That looks like it should be about right. There we go. And we've got a line going through both points. Is that what everybody else had? All right, good. Let's go ahead and jump to the last problem for the night. We've got problem number 7 here. If I can find it, there we go. Writing an equation of a line given its slope and y-intercept. Well, really, as long as they don't really specify, and we're just writing our line in slope-intercept form, then life is a cakewalk right now because we've got y equals mx plus b. And they give us our m and they give us our b, so we can just fill that in as y equals our slope, 3 over 5 times x, plus our y-intercept, 3. Da-da-da-da, we're there. Nice and easy, right? All right. I'm going to pull up the practice problem unless anybody has any questions. And if you do come up with any questions, just fire away in chat. I'll give you a minute or two to work on this, and I'll come back and explain it. Alrighty, so again, we're going to do the same thing we just did here. Or I apologize. Does anybody have any questions, or can I go ahead and go through the explanation here? All right, so we're going to use that same y equals mx plus b. Where are the clicking brushes? Y equals mx plus b, where they give us our m, so y equals m is our slope, negative 2 over 3 times x. And our plus b is going to be plus and negative 3, so we're just going to write that as a minus 3. And we're there. Any questions from anybody? All right, well, that'll pretty much conclude tonight's session. Come back on Wednesday for some fresh questions and fresh voice with Ms. Michelle helping us out. If you have any questions, feel free to fire them away in chat box. But otherwise, have a great night.